Thank you very much for joining us. We begin this news hour in Ethiopia, where the conflict between the government and Tigray rebels is escalating. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has now left the capital, Addis Ababa, and is heading to the front line to lead his troops in battle. It comes just hours after the United Nations ordered the immediate evacuation of its international staff. The presidents of Kenya and South Africa have both called for a ceasefire. In a moment, we'll be speaking to journalist Samuel Getachew in Addis Ababa, but Victoria Gatenby begins our coverage with this report.
We are Addis soldiers.
Some of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's soldiers are now prisoners of war, and the Tigrayans have been parading them before the cameras. The presidents of Kenya and South Africa say all parties must commit to ending the violence.
We expressed our conviction that there is scope for dialogue amongst the warring parties in Ethiopia, and that there is an urgent need for all parties to the conflict to commit to an immediate, indefinite, and negotiated ceasefire and an all-inclusive political dialogue.
As the war draws closer to the Ethiopian capital, plans to defend Addis Ababa are intensifying. These women have joined a neighbourhood protection force to guard against advancing rebel forces. They've set up roadblocks, are searching vehicles for weapons, and are checking people's documents.
We women believe that random security checks and passers-by are very important. We also encourage others to do the same, because when we do this, we have no doubt that strangers will be caught.
Abiy has informed the nation that he's going to the front line, where he'll personally lead the army, and he's asked Ethiopians to join him in what he calls the battle to save the nation. The US is calling the military escalation alarming and says it threatens any diplomatic progress between the government and Tigrayan forces.
Addis is under great threat, and it also means that there's likely to be considerably more suffering, and people should leave now to avoid the worst possible scenario, which could be rebel forces entering Addis, or starvation or deprivation.
Germany and France have joined the US in urging their citizens to leave Ethiopia, while the UN says it's temporarily relocating the families of its staff. Meanwhile, more than 2 million Ethiopians have now fled their homes, with reports of human rights abuses on both sides, and 7 million people are in need of food aid. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera.
Well, let's take a look at where the fighting is happening in Ethiopia. The TPLF rebels are pushing south from Tigray into the neighboring regions of Amhara and Afar, and down a major road running to the capital, Addis Ababa. Tigrayan rebels said earlier this month they'd taken control of these two towns. Kombolcha sits on a supply line linking the landlocked nation to the port city of Djibouti. Last week, the rebels claimed to have captured the northern town of Shiwarobit, about 200 kilometers from the capital, Addis Ababa. Let's get the latest now from journalist Samuel Getachew, who joins us live from Addis. So, Samuel, on Tuesday, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed had announced that he would go to the front line. What's the latest you're hearing about his movements?
Well, the head of government communications, Lagasa Tulu, has confirmed that the Prime Minister is indeed in the battleground, making sure that from their perspective that they would be in a position to defeat the TPLF that has been advancing to the capital in the last few weeks. It was also announced that the power of his office will be transferred to his deputy, Demeke Mekonnen, a longtime deputy of the Prime Minister, who really supported him when he became Prime Minister, taking his ambition aside and endorsing his candidacy and having him become Prime Minister. But this comes as this conflict is really impacting so many people, the French, the Turkish, and many countries, including the UN personnel and their dependents, have been asked to leave Ethiopia, fearing that by the UN, that the conflict is coming to a home stretch and it will be affecting them in the coming very soon.
Indeed, there is growing international concern, and as you say, a number of countries now asking their citizens to leave Ethiopia. Just coming back to the president's messaging, And, you know, the fact that he's now going to the front line himself, he's clearly trying to rally support and perhaps to get Ethiopians to join in this war effort. How are they reacting to this? Will they heed his call to join the war effort?
Well, this past weekend, there were thousands and thousands of Ethiopians around the world who came out in support of the prime minister, saying that they don't want to be having a TPLF anywhere near Addis Ababa. He's been getting more resources from Ethiopians living abroad. And even in Addis Ababa, the famous Olympian Haile Gebrselassie is saying that he's ready to go and join the prime minister in this conflict. There are many young people that are signing up to see that this conflict will be won by the Ethiopian side. But again, there has been many efforts to end this conflict in a more peaceful way. The U.S. envoy was just in town trying to speak to different actors. He has said that the more the TPLF is nearing the capital, their expectation and their demands are just increasing to a point that it's becoming impossible to solve this conflict.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a negotiated settlement can be reached anytime soon. Samuel, I know it's been very difficult to get information, accurate, reliable information about what's happening on the front line, about the conflict. From what you've been observing in the past few weeks and past few months, who do you think has the upper hand right now? There's, of course, word that the TPLF are nearing Addis and so on. But do you get a sense that, you know, they have the upper hand right now in this conflict?
Well, they've shown a very strength in the last few months, and that's why the Ethiopian side is alleging that they're being supported by either the U.S. Or even by the UN agencies. There's a mainstream accusation, not just by the government, but by many Ethiopians, that all these Western nations are in support of the TPLF. And there is a movement now saying no more of Western nations having influence in Ethiopia, because many people are insisting that this is an Ethiopian issue that should be solved by Ethiopians, something that captures the essence of the African Union legacy of African problem, African solution that has been promoted in the continent. But the Ethiopian side is also recruiting many people. There's resources that's coming from within and from outside Ethiopia by Ethiopian diasporas. So they're both getting all the support they can. But again, there's a fear Ethiopia and the state of emergency is really having an impact on the ground. There are many people that are being detained, accused of siding or supporting directly or indirectly of the TPLF, which the Ethiopian side is insisting is a terrorist organization.
Samuel, thank you so much for that update. Samuel Getachew, Ethiopian journalist, joining us there from the capital, Addis Ababa, with the latest on the situation there.